Hello, conferees on S.51. Nice to see you all. Today is some date, 28th. Glad to be here with you. We have 2 days left to wrap this up, and I have faith in the 6 of us that we can do that. I understand that the senators are bringing a proposal of amendment.
We have one senator.
It's not okay. This is not an offer from the conferees. Okay,
Just one senator.
go forth, Senator.
All right. You should have a copy of some proposed language, but let me just summarize what it is that I'm suggesting that we do. I'm suggesting that the principal change is to eliminate the elimination of this benefit at 120,000 at the beginning of it, and a complete elimination of it at 175. That's the first thing. The second thing is I'm suggesting that we add a provision to prohibit the veterans payments from going to people who have dishonorable discharges or bad conduct discharges. Now, someone on the latter issue raised with me today something that I have not thought of before coming in today. And that was that your committee, I believe, had discussed the issue of potentially having this apply on a gender basis to people who were discharged under the new Trump administration provisions that don't allow transgender people to serve. And that was not the intent of this amendment. And so one of the things is I think we should back up on that particular proposal to make sure that it does not inadvertently link in people of that category. And those, I'm virtually positive, do not include people who are dishonorably discharged. And it's the dishonorably discharged that I'm most concerned about. Is I don't think that Vermont should be paying people who are thrown out of the military, typically for criminal convictions of serious crimes. And that those people should be, based on their discharge certificates that have to be presented, or some evidence of discharge has to be presented in order to get this benefit, they would be easily picked up. It's not an administratively difficult thing. The former issue and the reason for the request to have the committee consider not posing an income limit is because of those states. We're in a competition. And right now, as we talk about the major problems that Vermont faces, housing is the one we talk about a lot, but there's also a demographic crisis because we don't get the people that we need to fill these jobs. And as we go through this list of jobs, and then you match them to a lot of the military occupational specialties, you find a lot of people fit into this category. And when we think about income, we have to remember that we are thinking about family income because that's how people file taxes. They don't file as individuals. A substantial number of people who retire from the military retire and relocate with their spouses. And you think about incomes, we talk about teachers right now as one of the categories of people that we need, in addition to nurses and construction workers and linesmen and so on. Average teacher salaries in Vermont right now are about $60,000 a year. At least that's what's being reported. So an individual retiree who effectively is a teacher, he's made less the first year, but he will make more the year afterwards, and has a spouse who's also a teacher, and that person, let's say, is making 60. You already are at the limit with the salary of 2 teachers. Mm-hmm. And that means that the benefit is not nearly what's intended. And we recognize that as the only state in New England, the only state surrounding us that has not the entire exemption, we're at a disadvantage because once we put that cap on, it says that if you're going to work, and what our target is to treat this as an economic development tool as well. Our target is the person who is working, who's going to retire in the late 30s or early 40s and has a career ahead of him or her. Mm-hmm. That career should be a career that matches what we're doing at the moment. Our discussions with ACCD and with the Department of Labor is focused on attracting, in other words, not just simply offering a benefit that lies on the table for someone to take, but to offer a benefit that uses advertising, that uses contacts with the transition people to military bases and the like, in order to attract people to Vermont, much of the same way that we use the stay-to-stay program and other kinds of programs to attract people to Vermont to work here, to fill that void that we have. To do that, we need every tool in our toolkit that we can. This is a tool that will make us at least competitive with the rest of the nation. We would be, at this point, even if we adopt what has been proposed by the House, we will be still, we will be the last state other than California and the District of Columbia that does not offer the other benefit.
Senator Brock, I appreciate that argument. I think there's a question about whether or not expanding the benefit is germane to the Committee of Conference, given that's certainly not between our two positions. It's
Well,
an expansion of the House's position.
Yeah.
But I'd love to actually spend the Second Amendment seems something that I think would be helpful to discuss a little more, because we spent a great deal of time on that question.
Well,
And I would just
argue that it is germane, that when you have in a particular dollar amount to restrict it, there was a purpose behind it. The question is, will it achieve the purpose that you want? Second is it has an issue regarding the amount of money that you're spending. And what we're suggesting in this amendment is the way we get this to match the budget is to hold off on its application.
wow.
So that again is the committee. So it's for the committee to decide.
Yep.
Let's-
On the dishonorable discharge, Representative Kimball has a really remarkable number of details on that. But I would just offer that in addition to sort of future dishonorable discharges under the Trump administration, I think there's also a long history of various political dishonorable discharges from Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and long before that, including we've heard a number of accounts of folks who reported rape and were considered and were dishonorably discharged from that. And so really want to be very careful about, we were not able to get a great deal of quality testimony on the issue, but really want to be very careful on that. I also understand there are administrative challenges with it that we might want to, when we hear from the tax department about Senator Cummings requested testimony about the tax credit that you all put forward. So maybe Director Samroff can, Deputy Commissioner, what's your name? Deputy Commissioner? Deputy Commissioner Samroff
That's correct.
can speak to both of those pieces when she comes up. Do you? I feel awkward in the fact that this is your proposal and not your
No, I think
conferee's proposal, and so I'm
was
trying to work through that
an
as a chair.
economic development bill that came to our committee with this proposal on it.
Mhm.
Knowing that that would get it
Mhm.
sent back to you,
Mhm.
and you were already negotiating the same issue here. The Economic Development Committee said it was okay if we stripped it so that their bill could go forward, not have to wait, go back to the chance of not getting out of here this week. So,
I'd offer that the cap, if you're speaking towards intent of our policy proposal, I think that there was a great deal of discomfort in exempting a certain category of taxpayers from taxation, or a certain category of income from taxation. That's not generally how we try to structure our tax structure. And the way we could find our way to being more comfortable on that was at least placing a progressive cap on it in the bill. And so that was sort of where we were coming from that. I'm also very nervous about the idea of postponing a year, given how important that is to people.
Yeah, so it's, I think the statistics we had, there's 3,900, and I might get the numbers wrong, so forgive me, but 3,900 military retirees in the state of Vermont right now receiving some kind of benefits. And of those, the people that are under $175,000 is about, I'm going to say 2,200. So there's 1,700 that are above that. So 1,700 with adjusted gross income that are above $175,000. So the question is, who is in need of a tax credit? The other part that I'll say, and much in our discussions is the exemption of military retirement pay enough of a lure to bring people in? When we looked at the statistics, the number of military retirees in the state of Vermont as a percentage of the population was equal to or greater than other states that did have a full exemption. So we didn't think that it was that necessarily that effective of an attractive tool. So that's, I mean, really, when we look at the numbers, we get it that people are saying we need every tool in the tool belt. And so we were willing to move towards the position of saying, is there something that we can do to help attract, or at least not be as much of a detriment to folks retiring from the military, understanding that they receive it as soon as they're 20 years in the military, with some exceptions, and that they then would be able to get full retirement pay as they pursue a second career. And so they do add a lot to our communities, they certainly do. And the extension of Vermont survivor benefits is really good in this. I think there's what, I can't remember the number of families, 715, something like that. Families that are receiving survivor benefits as well. This is all off the top of my head, and the data is also long in the day. But anyway, so we hear you. And we thought we were really trying to come from zero to somewhere which was really close to what the request was.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and there has been significant movement from what we've seen in prior years. At the same time, as we drafted the bill in economic development, we were looking at what tools do we need in order to attract the people to fill all these jobs that we can't fill. And I could find very few places where there's a match like there is between military retirees who are leaving service and the jobs that we need to fill, at least according to what our state indicates. And with people who are not just entering the workforce that need CTE, but people who actually know how to do the things that we need done. And that's the thing that made this an attractive tool. And what we hear, particularly from the people who are operating the transition programs in the military, is that people look at Vermont as it is right now and put Vermont down, cross it off the list right from the very start, and don't look at it other than people who are retired because they have family here and other reasons. Vermont is not on the radar, and it's principally because of this restriction.
Do you want to hear from?
I would like to
Okay.
hear from the tax department, since
Does anyone
you
have?
stripped out our entire bill.
Indeed, we did.
And we would, the reason was tax department said it was very difficult to do, and we'd like to know that.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions for Kirby before he? Great. Okay. Thanks for your participation in the process, Kirby. We did that. Deputy Commissioner Summerall, if you'd like to join us.
Right.
I wonder if you could, before we go to the Medicare credit, I wonder if you, which is not called out, sorry. I wonder if you could take a moment to talk about sort of, I know that you had a way of verifying military service, and I wonder if this amendment would complicate that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. For the record, Rebecca Samroff, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Taxes. And yeah, I think that adding, kind of more detail to a veterans exemption, like excluding certain class of veterans, could kind of get our, administrative frontline staff into some, awkward, murky territory when it comes to the review of refundable credits, which is an area, we'll discuss more with the caregiver tax credit as well, where, that's the refundable credits that, we send out the door is like a big area, integrity for our department, making sure that those are, there's thoughtful review, thorough review given to those claims, and that we're doing, a great job protecting state coffers. So, when there's, a lot of nuance that doesn't have a clear paper trail, which admittedly, I'm not sure what the, what kind of like your discharge letter looks like in an honorable versus dishonorable situation. And certainly the nuance that was being discussed at this table, like the types of dishonorable discharge, like some are, valued differently, I think, in this conversation. I don't see, that having a very clear paper trail, like something objective that a tax examiner can be like, like you qualify and you don't. And what I would worry about is, having staff in pretty awkward conversations with people about like whether or not they're, truly eligible for this credit, and kind of rehashing, potentially intense, parts of someone's personal history, to get at something that, we'd hope to be a little more cut and dry. So I do have administrative concerns about, complicating the veterans credit, too much beyond just, where you discharge from service.
Do you think a call to the Veterans Affairs Officer, the Veterans Affairs Office could straighten that out?
Absolutely, but that is like a level of review that would be pretty unprecedented to have, someone making a call with every claim we receive.
They could provide you with a cheat sheet of the description of different types of discharges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there are. I am confident that we would, find our way to, administer any complex, a program that this body, sends our way. But the question of, lift versus, what we're getting out of that, I think is, a big one for us. We want to make sure that folks are overall, we're continuing to be able to kind of have the kind of customer service experience that we hope all Vermonters, get when they interact with our departments. Generally tries to be more positive, helpful, a little less mining into hard parts of your professional history for this example.
Just ask you a question. In what did you envision using as your identifier for military retiree right now?
Yeah, sure.
Without.
So, I will say that, until this becomes law, we don't generally have a full, implementation huddle with our operational directors and divisions about how things will go. So that we don't have an operational plan that will, that's already finalized right now. But what's helpful about this is that I have had a number of people describe how just with a few clicks, you can download your discharge letter from the VA. I haven't.
So you're looking, that's what I'm asking for, as opposed to whether or not you're getting anything in an automated feed now that would tell you that, or potentially now would tell you that, and you would have to go to the individual in order to get that information. Now, I know, I suspect it's been changed now, and it's something that I could look into very, very quickly. Typically on the discharge certificate, not on the certificate, but on the document, the DD form 214, which is the discharge certificate. There used to be, and they may have taken it off, and so that's why I want to double check, what's called an SPN, service something program number, which is a 3-digit number that tells you why a person has been discharged. I remember using it in the Paul Lawrence case, for example, because he said he was discharged because of just some medical condition. He was discharged for personality disorder and a number of other things. That SPN would indicate the character or type of discharge, whether it was a dishonorable discharge, bad conduct discharge, and stuff like that. And that may be available, but in an automated way right now, but I don't know, and I would have to check.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up some great questions because we definitely have work to do to see if I think our assumption is that this would have to be a case by case, if we decide to check on the eligibility criteria, which is it's not our norm to require paperwork up front for claimants. It's more, should a return meet some other characteristics that, flags for additional review. That's when we'd often follow up for more information about any number of our
programs. There's also the other states, the other 47 states that do this, do they have a method that would be easy and clean and perhaps automated? It's worth checking.
Yeah.
I remember you looking into this.
Yes and no, and I'm trying to recall all the stuff because I'm trying to remember. I think there's 5 or 6 different classifications of discharge, and it is the form that you suggest, whether it's other than honorable, bad conduct, dishonorable, but there's also honorable, and then there's without any kind of early dismissal, I believe is one. So you're not suggesting that we cut those out?
No.
So there is that form, and you can verify, but it would take that 2-part verification. So to
but I think it's easy enough also just to require, we've got the list of contacts in other states we got doing some of the research on this, to see how others do it, whether or not there is an automated way.
Well, I think the concern, one of the pieces of nuance that I think Deputy Commissioner brought up is having people sort of dive too deep into someone's life. And the example that you shared about someone having a personality disorder, I think that diagnosis even has what it actually is used, what circumstances someone receives a personality disorder has changed in
Yeah.
breathtaking ways in the last 100 years,
Yeah.
and often significant amounts of discrimination attached to it, right?
Mhm.
And so those kinds of values-based decisions that have, haunted our military service, as well as like all the rest of our government bureaucracy, are things that I don't know if we want to reinforce in our statute.
Well,
today.
that's why I'm suggesting a
Yeah.
very narrow
Yes.
classification as to what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And if, to the extent that you can receive it directly as an answer to a question, as opposed to having to look at every document, that would be the ideal situation.
Yeah.
If that were done.
And so here so far, it probably can't be done, but should we move on to the other?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I don't think the votes are here to
Great.
do that
Okay.
today. And
So let's put that topic
I
aside.
would like to hear why you rejected our entire bill.
Absolutely. And it's not entirely on administrative concerns, but.
Thank you
to
for that.
Yes, I don't want to put that entirely on you. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, the integrity of our refundable credit programs is one of our kind of our bread and butter. It's not our favorite piece of tax administration to talk about, the fraud management and kind of like managing the claims to our refundable credits that are filed with integrity. But it's a big part of our work, and so in this caregiver credit, it's a tricky set of eligibility criteria to verify through a tax program. It feels to me like a very compelling cause, but maybe something that could be done more effectively as like a direct human services program rather than through the tax department. And some of the reasons are, let's see, like the three major eligibility criteria is that the caregiver is unpaid, that they're working at least 20 hours a week on the care for an individual that has some specific needs around daily care. So like two of the three of those components are, we have not, been sitting down with our operational directors, conceived of any way that we could verify that. So unpaid is not something we're really good at verifying at the tax department. We're really good at verifying the presence of income, not so much the absence of it. And especially in these, the situation contemplated by this credit, which is like you're within your family system, if there was compensation, I don't think it would be like on a W-2, it would probably be under the table. Also, the spending at least 20 hours per week is impossible to verify, beyond an attestation. So those are, kind of like the two big flags. The bill does contemplate the department receiving, like a doctor's note that kind of verifies that the person receiving care from the credit claimant does in fact need, support with these activities of daily living. And that's helpful, but it does, it's a little like, this is unprecedented and a little awkward for the department as well, because we would be receiving very sensitive medical information about an individual who is not even the taxpayer, not the person that's claiming the credit. It's about a third party. And because I think the bill's designed to be flexible around, the flexibility that a, family has to, achieve to manage like caregiving like this in their house. There's no limit on how many people could claim a credit for care for the same individual. So it's just, there's really we don't feel like there's a lot of avenues for us to administer such a generous refundable credit with, with a lot of confidence that we're giving it to people that are truly eligible, when there's so much that would just be based on a personal attestation.
I want to sort of validate to you all that I personally, at least, think that the intent around it is incredible. And I think it's actually, the feds are doing this now too, but I think it's really sort of innovative thinking to use a tax credit in place of a program in this way. And I really appreciate that. And so I would love if, there could be more summer work or like with way more attention towards administration. I am someone anecdotally just have had a few friends in the last few years try to account for the amount of care work they do in their own households with their partners, mostly as like a, couples tiff, and how remarkably difficult that it is to declare what is care work and what is not care work in the context of family or a household. And I can't imagine the tax department wading into such a thing.
Did you say TIF? That's a different committee.
That was my first time for you. So we have the whole day.
Well, you know,
We catch up.
your mention of more work in this area is probably justified because, you know, we hear, for example, the Alzheimer's Association time and time again of the unpaid care work that caregivers are giving to patients. And from an economic perspective, what we also hear is that it keeps people out of expensive care in institutions
absolutely.
for a period of time. The problem is, as you mentioned, it's hard to document in a way that you're comfortable with for tax purposes. But at the same time, it probably is worth doing some kind of study to get better estimates of what does it really cost in Vermont and what does it really save in Vermont. And given the cost of inpatient care for people who have Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, that's a huge cost that we bear.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions for Rebecca? Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you all take any testimony on, there's a program out of AHS that I think is called Choices for Care, but I could be wrong, because it's not.
Choices for Care.
Okay.
This program.
Did you all take testimony about that?
No.
I've been curious how these two things overlap, and I have absolutely
I think
no
you
idea.
can get home health nurses into your home. Rather than go to a nursing home, you can get the same kind of services. It's not,
That's a different program than what I'm talking about.
okay.
So what I'm thinking of, and it might not be called Choices for Care, is there's some program that might not even exist anymore, might have just existed 5 years ago.
Alright.
And maybe by speaking in it to the committee of conference, someone will message me with the name of the program, because that sometimes happens.
Okay, because I know
Is the idea that family members are eligible to receive a stipend
Oh,
from the state when they provide care.
that's Medicaid. You can choose your caregiver. Patrick is nodding.
Oh, did I ask you about this like months ago?
And I
Totally
think we
forgot.
did take testimony on that.
Okay.
And but that is usually, full-time, I guess it can be part-time.
Okay.
Yes, that is there.
And were you imagining that folks would be eligible for both that and the tax credit?
No,
Okay.
this was just for the credit for the people that are just
Totally
doing what
unpaid.
families do unpaid.
So could there be in a household, could there be one family member who's providing unpaid care and one family member and getting the tax credit, and another family member who's providing paid care under Medicaid and getting that payment?
No. No. Have to be.
Anything else, team?
No.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. I imagine we'll see you tomorrow or Friday,
I will see you.
and we'll all move on to the conference now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, wait.
Well,
Before you go,
sorry. Yeah.
Just trying to make sure, is the proposal to lift three of them?
No, I
Reactive.
think this is not an official proposal from the country. That was just a
I
article
think
of
right now
discussion.
what's on the table is a work
Proposal, yeah.
proposal. And it's up to us to decide.
Okay, thank you.